My name is Nyasaina Kwamboka. I am an environmental researcher and an economist. I am from Kenya, from the clan of Agwata, the tribe of the Abagusi. And today I'm here to speak with you about geothermal energy as a pillar of human security in the East African Rift System. This topic is particularly important to all of you within this room because human security is a matter of extreme urgency within our regions. Our continent is equipped with a significant opportunity when it comes to energy. We have a diversified energy portfolio which ranges from fossil fuels and renewable energy. We have the Morocco Noor Solar Complex, which contributes 585 megawatts. We have the Ethiopia Grand Renaissance Hydroelectric Power Dam, which has 5 gigawatts worth of energy. The Kenya Lake Turkana Wind Farm, which has 310 megawatts, and the Kenya Menengai Geothermal Station, which produces 350 megawatts. What makes this opportunity specifically important to our region is the fact that it not only creates jobs, but also promotes energy security in one of our most fragile regions within our countries. So today's agenda is going to be focused on renewable energy. For context, if you've ever seen an active volcano or hot springs, then you have seen geothermal energy in action. You see, the Earth's crust is made out of earth and water, and beneath that we have hot molten rocks, which are called magma. This magma within the Earth's core is hotter than the sun, about 50,000 times more powerful than any oil or gas that we have on our planet. So when we tap into geothermal energy, we are essentially drilling 6 miles deep into the world's most finite sources of energy. It is a pollution-free renewable energy resource that we have access to through the East African Rift System. So the agenda today is going to follow energy access, human security, climate resilience, and geothermal opportunity. So electricity access in the world. The global progress, most of the world, particularly in Europe and North America, Asia, and parts of Latin America, are now equipped with universal electricity. And there is gradual improvement in the African continent. Kenya, Ghana, and Rwanda have specifically seen the most advancement within the most recent decades with renewable projects. However, 25% of East Africans have access to reliable electricity, and this is data from the African Development Bank. Electricity inequality mirrors global economic inequality because over 600 million Africans remain off-grid. The lack of electricity is really dire because it forces households to rely on other sources of energy such as charcoal, kerosene, and firewood, which prolongs climate change. It's okay, you're good. So how does a lack of electricity affect human security? So for this, I decided to look into the UNDP Human Development Report, which tells us what the 7 dimensions of human security is. We have economic security, health, education, food and water, gender inequality, environmental and political security. But without reliable electricity access, businesses and jobs cannot grow and they cannot function properly, which traps them in a cycle of poverty and low productivity. With regards to health, clinics cannot refrigerate their medicine and they cannot operate medical devices, further harming the people who go there for help. Educationally, children cannot study when the sun sets because there's no access to electricity, and this limits their opportunity of learning and engaging within educational institutions. Food and water, if we do not have any electricity, then this limits the power of irrigation, food processing, and further emphasizing and increasing hunger risks. With gender inequality, women and girls bear the burden of having to go and fetch firewood from different regions, and this harms their decision-making process within the energy realm. Additional to that, environmental insecurity, heavy reliance on fossil fuels or wood or charcoal will exacerbate environmental degradation and increase long-term environmental disasters. So a lack of electricity access significantly impacts the 7 pillars of the human development security. Okay, so now we get into geothermal energy. So East Africa is the epicenter of geothermal production. The East African Rift System is 2,500 miles all across 13 countries. We have Ethiopia, Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, the DRC, Malawi, Zambia, and Mozambique. With the capacity of 20,000 megawatts of energy, only 4.5% of that has been tapped into, and that is by Kenya. Kenya leads the continent with geothermal energy capacity, with 45% of its electricity coming from geothermal resources. However, most of the countries within the East African Rift have been unable to tap into this resource. And why is that? It's because of weak governance and a lack of financing. So if we have any coordinated regional governance, we could unlock the East African Rift System's full 20,000 megawatt potential and provide clean energy, economic security, and leverage our global climate diplomacy. Okay, so climate change is a threat multiplier. Climate change as a threat multiplier was a term that was coined in 2007 by the CNA American Naval Analysis Military Advisory Board, and it explains that climate change exacerbates the problems that we already have within our regions. So I want you to have a look at this visual map that shows us the indicators of climate-related exposure. So I'm going to focus here on the East African region. We have Somalia, which has extreme heat waves and extreme wildfires. We have Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda that occasionally suffer from a lot of flash floods, and this causes a lot of instability. Within here, this region, Madagascar and Mozambique, they have extreme problems with cyclones, which come at a regular basis. And whenever any of these regions are hit with a climate disaster, then they lose access to all of their electricity. So imagine not having access to your hospitals, not having access to your schools, not having access to basic communication. This is a real human crisis that geothermal energy can assist with. So I want to give you a successful case study of geothermal energy in Africa, which is from Kenya. So Kenya is the 6th largest geothermal energy producer in the entire world, as we can see on this map. And it has been successful because of private-public partnerships and strong institutional policies. In addition to that, geothermal sites are majority of the time located within indigenous regions. These indigenous regions have tribal people that live there, and this is their ancestral land. But if you go in trying to take their land away, then that causes a lot of conflict and strife. Kenya has been able to impede that problem by giving royalties to the indigenous people that live within this land, and that has been an ethical way to move forward with geothermal energy development. The evidence of human security is very clear. Geothermal energy strengthens economic security by providing affordable access to electricity in homes and industries. It enhances health security through reliable electricity for hospitals, vaccine refrigeration, and clean energy. Climate-resilient power projects as well, environmental and community security, and this reduces deforestation. Overall, Kenya's geothermal investments demonstrates that energy reliability and economic gain and that geothermal energy and energy reliability are a security stabilizer for our community and the state. Thank you. So I have some policy recommendations in efforts to create more stability of geothermal energy development within our other 12 countries. And this is going to follow the format of strengthening our local governance and institutions that have policies for geothermal energy, public-private partnerships. Geothermal project sites cost between $5 million and $5 billion. And it's very hard for our countries to support this on their own through public funding, which is why it's important to bring in private companies to support with that. We also need regional coordination and data sharing, which is why we're here with people from the East African Rift region. This is going to be very important in terms of how we could amplify our resource of geothermal energy. And finally, we must integrate energy access into human security and peace-building strategies. We need to utilize all 20,000 megawatts of energy because it is very possible, as we spoke about, the energy advancement within Africa. Thank you. That's it. Have any questions?
The floor is up. Do you have an ideal timeline for the development of the infrastructure needed to this?
Yes. I would say that with regards to the timeline, the best thing to do is to look at the case studies, right? Within Kenya, geothermal projects typically take between 5 to 7 years. And so that is after another 5 years of securing the funding, the policies, and ensuring the indigenous people on that land get their royalties, right? So I would say that it would take between, let's say 10 to 12 years for a full geothermal site to start producing any type of electricity. And with regards to the time frame, I would recommend that by, let's say 2050, we have at least one geothermal operating site in each of the 13 East African countries. Thank you.
You mentioned to do this, you have to dig 6 miles into the ground. Are there specific areas that you must do this, or can you do it anywhere?
Great question. I would say that yes, there has to be specific areas that you dig into the ground. And this is usually, you can't just go and see where geothermal energy is or where the Earth's crust is most thin. We use a lot of geographic information systems and spatial analysis to see where the perfect place to dig and drill. However, sometimes there are problems if there's inconsistency with the drilling, because if a person goes in to drill in a specific region, they might find a dry well. So that's $5 million down the drain, which is why we're very happy to coordinate with data experts and AI advancements as well to increase our likelihood of success whenever we're drilling our wells.
What is the percentage of success historically with finding the right area to dig?
I would say that I actually visited a geothermal energy site over the summer, and the success rate was about 70 to 80% success rate, which I think is fairly high. Of course, there were some losses, but the success is something that is very beneficial. And I think with more technological advancements, that barrier is going to reduce.
Do you have any organizations in mind that you've thought of when it comes to public-private partnerships? Like who you want to partner with and who you think would be beneficial to partner with?
Okay. I do know that Socian Energy is a private-owned company within Kenya, and they actually commissioned one of their geothermal energy sites within the Menengai caldera. So their work has been very successful. I would recommend partnering with them. I would also recommend working within the public institutions to support the work, such as getting subsidized or getting loans for that type of partnership as well.
And another question is, I know that we talked about this earlier. You seem to have a lot of passion for this topic and this area of work. What do you think drove you to do this research? just in general, drives you?
Okay. Like I said, I am indigenous to Kenya, and I would say that a lot of the problems that we discussed earlier with regards to human security are either problems that I have experienced personally or problems that I know other people, like my classmates, have experienced personally. So with regards to the access to electricity, oftentimes when we were growing up, we wouldn't have electricity and we couldn't do our assignments. So you can imagine going home, having an assignment due, and you just can't do it at night. So that was something that caused a lot of educational stress for a young person. I would say with regards to health insecurity, I know about a lot of people within rural areas who haven't had access to proper healthcare, or mothers who have lost their children simply because the hospital didn't have electricity. So it's something that I want it to change. I want there to be progress within this region. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now that you've given this presentation, what do you think the next steps are for the African Union to support these projects?
What are the next steps for the African Union to support this project? Well, there's actually an upcoming international conference next year by the African Geothermal Association. It's supported with the public company in Kenya called the Geothermal Development Company, and it's also supported by the African Union. So they are bringing in experts within the geothermal energy to have conversations on how they could improve on this. I think the importance of data sharing is the first step. Gaining that knowledge and seeing how you could strategically benefit as opposed to create more losses is very important. Thank you.
And I don't know the science behind this, but geothermal energy, there's no because it's pretty much infinite, there's infinite access. Are there any issues that could come up? Are there any risks that could come up with relying so heavily on geothermal energy?
Okay. I would say that the risks that I have been exposed to with regards to geothermal energy would be at the mining site. So whenever they drill these 6 miles deep into the ground, they come across ancient fossils and rocks and gases that should not be released from the ground. One of them is sulfur. And it has this very strong rotten egg smell. If you're within this region for a long time, then you can get headaches, severe stomach aches, and just terrible things can happen to the miners working at the site. But with regards to relying on this specific base load energy, I would say that there's no long-term consequence. However, there could be fragmented periods where you have a problem with some specific machinery that breaks down, right? And this machinery is very expensive, machinery that's not manufactured within our continent. So we would have to reach out to our suppliers to bring it back, and that would cause some problems. But the beauty of renewable energy is the fact that it is very diversified. So if your geothermal energy site is out of commission for about 50 days, then you can rely on your hydroelectric power dam or your solar systems. Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So I see one of your policy recommendations is strengthen governance. So as you may be aware, there's some countries in this region that have weak states and weak governance. How would that? What are the implications of that in meeting your goals in integrating energy access? For example, in Somalia.
Absolutely. I really like that question. I think it's very timely to the problems that we're currently facing within the East African region. So Somalia is right over here, South Sudan, Sudan, and actually recently Tanzania had their elections, and they're having a lot of violence trying to accept this new dictator. But I would say that this is actually more of a reason for us stable states to start working on our energy systems. Because if there's conflict within other regions, then that means that there's going to be refugees coming into your country. How are we going to be able to support them if we have no electricity? So it's not to say that the weak states are going to roll the ball and join in on what we're doing if they have other existential crises that they're facing, but for the people who are currently stable, if they have capacity to, it's in their best interest. Thank you. Anyone else?
What's your biggest obstacle to this?
What is the biggest obstacle? I would say currently the biggest obstacle is the fact that at a lot of the international conferences, we have policymakers who come in. These policymakers are not geothermal energy experts, they're not scientists, and so their understanding of geothermal energy becomes, well, geothermal energy is too expensive. I want to buy these solar panels instead, which I can distribute much quicker and more effectively. The problem with that is that solar panels last for about 10 to 35 years, depending on which one you get, right? And so the problem that many people are seeing is that policymakers are not equipped with the right amount of knowledge to make the strategic decisions, which is why in this room we have geothermal experts, policymakers, and other stakeholders as well to try and change that.
This may be related to your response to the previous question. I'm wondering a little bit about if there are geopolitical challenges that we would face in implementing this proposal. And that could come from maybe countries that are traditional fossil fuel producers, and maybe we would be more reliant upon them if we didn't develop our own indigenous geothermal capabilities. Or maybe that could be a country like China, which is the world's largest producer of solar panels and so forth. So I'm wondering if you anticipate any geopolitical challenges or resistance to implementing these plans.
Okay. Geopolitical challenge or resistance. I would definitely say that with regards to relying on China as one of our suppliers, it's actually a really interesting fact, but majority of the technology that we use within